Hey guys, welcome to the 2014 Dragon Ruler deck list. My name is An1 Platinum. Make sure to check out my channel, rate my videos, subscribe. Okay guys, basically yes, the Dragon Ruler deck originally dominated the meta, I think back a couple years ago, and I was absent from the game when the deck was actually at its most popular. I actually heard it was actually almost hated as much as Dark World. But, Dark World is pretty, the most despised archetype of all time. But it was hated a lot because it was almost God tier. It was tier 1. You had to play it if you were to do well in a tournament unless you had something like really exotic, but it almost never happened. Okay, it was basically destroyed by the ban list. However, this deck, it can basically be extremely competitive if you just have the right amount of cards, creativity, and guts. Okay, now, I'm going to go through the cards in the deck list. Basically, Dragon Ruler is now it's basically considered an underdog deck, in my opinion, I do believe, because almost nobody runs it, but that's a benefit because then people can't side against it. So this is how it works. You're going to have just one copy of each because of the ban list, Blaster, Redux, Tempest, and Tidal. And then what you're going to have after that, you're going to have 3 Ice Hands, 3 Fire Hands. And basically what they do is that, they're designed, in this deck for your opponent to run through them. You're taking out their precious resources and basically any kind of beat sticks that you get out. Realistically, if you're going against like a tier 1 deck, they're going to be, they're going to know what you're trying to do, but they're going to end up taking out at least 2, maybe 3. But that's really all you need. You want 3 copies of these to make sure you run into them. And you're taking out your opponent's back row, their monsters, but the real purpose of this is to make fuel for Blaster and Tidal. Okay, then you're going to have 3 copies of Influence Dragon. Now, Influence Dragon is how people back in the day actually made Leo. He's basically the only, level 10 synchro you'd want to use in this deck, like Ally of Justice, Defensive Armor. That'd be an interesting tech to play against tellarknights, but that's for another video. Okay, then you got 3 copies of Flame Velguard. He helps you take out your rank 8, not rank 8, but just level 8 synchros. He's a good wall. I mean, there are times where, you'll have him in your hand, not much else, but he's a good wall. You're just filling up your graveyard when your opponent runs over it, but he is food for cards of consonance, which we'll get into later. Okay, then you're going to use 3 copies of Delta Flyer. Now, Delta Flyer, he's basically what you use to get out Star Eater in this deck. That's basically, I do not know why the Dragon Ruler community never actually embraced that card, but we'll also get into that in a little bit. And then for your last 3, you're going to run 3 Max Cs. Now, Max C, he helps you adjust your opponent's playing style, but in addition, it helps you special summon one of the other rulers using Redux. Okay, now the monsters are done. Now we're going to go through the spell cards. The first 3 being Dragon Shrine. This card helped actually bring Dragon Rulers back from the dead because basically it was not a consistent deck. Before this card came out in the Saga of Blue Eyes White Dragon structure deck. With this card, you basically, you only have 3 targets to use its secondary effect, which are the Flame Velguards. Basically, drop it, and then you drop like a Dragon Ruler or another monster just to add fuel to what you're wanting to do. Other than that, you just use it to drop a Dragon Ruler. Just basically a Rhoda, believe it or not, of this deck. And we've been able to use 3 copies of this for quite a while. Okay, 3 copies of Upstart Goblin, because you want speed in this deck. Now, here you go. 2 copies of Cards of Consonance. Basically, with this card, you have 6 targets. You have the 3 Flame Velguards, the 2 Influence Dragons. In Mythic Rulers, this has been run for quite a while, but this is still relevant in this deck. This card, I can guarantee you, personally, that in me playing, this card has never been dead. You always have fuel for it with 2 copies with 6 targets in this deck because you're able to search with Tempest being banished and stuff like that. Okay, and then Foolish Burial, it's basically a 4th Dragon Shrine. Burial from a different dimension, which is basically a win condition. It also helps you out a lot if you had to bring out a Dragon Ruler on your first turn, usually if you go second. And then this will be replaced by Regeki, Dark Hole. Now, Dark Hole basically, self-explanatory, takes out your opponent's monsters. You honestly don't have to use it that much. It's just, if you're top decking, it's a god top deck basically. But also there will be times to where you just got your face beat in, and this basically levels the playing field for you. You should have it just like how you should have some of these trap cards. That's for the spell cards. Now for the trap cards. The trap cards, you're going to run 3 copies of Reckless Greed. Now, Reckless Greed, you need to have it in here for speed, but also you play it only if you're in a tight situation. This card could kill you if you don't use it right. You only use it if you're in a tight situation, like you're losing, but only if it's like a last ditch effort, but you usually lose anyway. But if you have 2 copies of it in your hand, and also if you're going for an OTK, because every time I get even only 1 copy of this in my hand and I have a favorable field, this guarantees that the deck wins. And then for your next cards, for traps, you're going to have 2 Black Horn of Heavens. Now, Black Horn of Heaven, everything special summons now. I suggest even if you're running like, some kind of rogue deck, you'd want 3 copies of this. I think with a rogue deck, it'd be nice to have like 12 trap cards. Okay, and then 2 copies of Mirror Force. Believe it or not, this deck does need it even with the hands, just because your opponent, shaddolls, tellarknights, Burning Abyss to some extent, they will be running at you so hard, ripping through your resources, that this deck actually saves you. But in the side deck, it's nice to have something like D-Prison in your side deck, just in case if you want to have the little extra security. You basically swap out your Upstart Goblins for any side deck cards. You might even pull out your Recklesses. It's basically up to your choice what you want to run in the side deck. Okay, that's all the trap cards. Now for the extra deck. This deck is running 2 copies of Star Eater. Now, Star Eater is brought out with Delta Flyer's effect. Basically, Delta Flyer, I don't know why it was never actually used in the meta, simply because it's so easy to run. You can search it with Tempest. It's a somewhat sizable body, 1500 attack, but you could easily take out, basically you choose between Leo or Star Eater with that card. Then of course you got the 2 copies of Leo. He is a beat stick of himself. He is extremely hard to get off the board. Even if he's easy, your opponent is going to spend 2 turns dealing with him. Triton Dragon. Basically, this is the Scrub Slayer. You're going to use it against Scrubs. You'll know when to use it. They don't run competitive back row. Even if there's a Magic Cylinder back there, if you use his effect, take out 2 of your back row, like a Mirror Force you're not going to use, or a Black Horn, which you would not use against a Scrub. You take those out, you attack 3 times, they deflect it with Magic Cylinder, you attack them directly with 6,000 damage, you usually kill them, they rage, and you just sit in the great ambience that is your victory. And then 1 copy of Scrap Dragon. Basically, this is just to get over anything stupid like Necro Valley or anything like that, because believe it or not, Gravekeepers are probably this deck's only major weakness. But you have Blaster's effect, which basically sends a fire monster from your hand to the graveyard along with him. You blow up Necro Valley, and you can bring this out, blow it up and such. And then you got Stardust Spark Dragon. Now, Stardust Spark Dragon is kind of like Stardust Dragon, except, he's just there to, almost like Leo, to just be a problem for your opponent, so you can bring out another beat stick. Then Black Rose Dragon, you can go into Black Rose using a hand and a Flame Veil Guard. No, my bad, I have a little dyslexia, I was talking about the next card. You could go into it using a Delta Flyer or an Influence Dragon with a Fire Hand. Now, this is the card I was talking about, Armades. You're able to go into him using the Flame Veil Guard and a hand. It's basically your opponent, like you have a fire hand and there's no monsters on your opponent's field, but you know they got like 3 or 4 set cards. Either take him out to take out like a trap hole card, or you end up bringing him out just to make sure that you can't, you know, the monster cannot be destroyed. He's actually really good. I've actually won attacking the guy directly like 3 times with this, just because he just couldn't muscle a monster out. Okay, him mixed with an Exceed monster is very hard for an opponent struggling to get over. Then next, you're going to have a Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosac. He's a classic. You're going to want to run him in there just also to take out stuff like Necro Valley. Basically, you want to get, if you don't know who your opponent is first round, you want to get him out as quickly as possible, because if your opponent plays the Necro Valley or any other kind of card like that, you're screwed. Okay, Master of Blades. This card is really underrated. Basically, I had a guy rage quit against me on Dev Pro, and I have won several rounds on Dev Pro using this card, simply because they would try to play a trap hole against him, but his effect protects against the trap hole because it targets him, regardless if he was just summoned or not. Use effect, detached, you blow up their trap card, and then you actually blow up a monster or another back row. I mean, it's pretty sweet. Like, you can do it multiple times in one chain, too. Like a guy, he played the trap hole, I negated it with his effect, blew up a monster, then he played Forbidden Chalice, and then I activated his effect again, and then blew up the last card, and then he quit. Okay, and then this is my personal favorite, number 42, Galaxy Tomahawk. Basically, I think I'm going to switch. This guy would not be good to play in the main extra deck anymore. He'd probably go to the side deck. Simply because he, before Raigeki, basically the idea was that if your opponent had like 3 monsters on the field, you bring him out, you activate his effect, and what his effect does, if you don't know, you probably do just because it was kind of cool if you ever read it, you basically summon out 3, basically if he's by himself, you summon out 4 2000 beat sticks that can't cause damage to your opponent but can take out their monsters. You just use those to clear off their field, and then you just let him sit there because he's a pretty epic, 3000 body defense. And basically I think you would swap him out for another Mecha Phantom Beast, which is in my personal side deck. Okay, and then number 11, Big Eye. He's a classic. You use him to take control of any monster you can't really get rid of. Leviathan Dragon. He is a rank 3. But remember, you can use a Delta Flyer, another Delta Flyer, or a Influence Dragon. Basically, you summon this card out on your first turn, say. Oh man, these things are flying. You summon him out on your first turn. You just let him sit there. Your opponent ends up setting a card. What you can do, if you have something like Influence Dragon in your hand or another Delta Flyer, they're both tuners. You can't summon something, like a Black Rose or anything off of that because they're both tuners. So the way you remedy this is by summoning out another Influence Dragon, sending him to the graveyard, and then special summoning out your Leviathan Dragon. And that would be a good beat stick. However, if you're afraid and they got back row, this is what this next card's for. Totem Bird. You can only do it with 2 wind monsters, which both Delta Flyer and Influence Dragon are both wind monsters, as you can see. Basically, what you do is that when he's summoned, he basically can protect himself and others from trap holes by sending material to the graveyard. And when he has no material left, I think you send, it only works once. You send both materials to the graveyard. And then he's basically just a 1600 body. He's not a beater anymore because he has 1900 right here. But it is decent tech. Basically, you summon him out, and then you can bring out something like, a Tempest or a Blaster. Either one, if you have them. Other than that, you can just kind of wreak havoc on your opponent by just attacking with 1600 because they haven't gotten to their boss monsters yet, which is actually kind of funny to watch. Okay, guys, that was my deck list for Dragon Rulers. If you want to see the side deck, just leave a comment below. I can post another video. And, okay, catch you guys next time. My name is An1 Platinum. Make sure to check out my channel, subscribe, like my videos, and see you guys later. Oh, yeah!